Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica. It is launch day for block number 5 of our 2025 Sew With Me series. I hope you're enjoying our sew along so far. If you've missed any of our previous videos, make sure to go back and watch all of those. I have a playlist here on YouTube on my main page. You can click that and see all the videos that have been released. And then there's also a link below to get to the blog post that has all that information as well. Also, don't forget to join our Sew With Me group. Everyone is over there sharing their fun makes as well. And it's so fun to see everybody's projects as we sew along together. All right, let's take a look at block number 5. And this might actually look a little familiar to you. This was inspired by our Lucky Layer Cake quilt. It's a very similar block. I just wanted to add it into this quilt. This block is a lot of fun to make, so let's go ahead and get started with today's tutorial. Okay, let's start with a little recap. Here is what we did for block number 1. Here was block number 2. And then in that same video, we made our backing block, same ribbons, but we added a different star and we added a label. Block number 3 was this cute half square triangle star. And then block number 4 was this cute sawtooth star. All right, so these are the blocks that we've made so far. Let's go ahead and start with today's video for block number 5. So here are our pieces for block number 5. We're going to start off with our D and H squares. We're going to take the H squares, turn them over, and we're going to draw a line from corner to corner on the wrong side of the H squares. If you have the diagonal seam tape on your machine, you can skip this step. We're going to take the H squares and place them on opposite ends of the D rectangle, and we're going to be making sure that our diagonal lines are running in opposite directions. And you can go ahead and place a pin to hold that in place while you sew. And then we're going to take this to our sewing machine and just sew right along both those diagonal lines. And here's what that looks like. Now we're going to trim 1/4 of an inch away from our stitch line. And then we can just press these out. I'm going to go ahead and trim up this block to make sure that it is the correct size. As you know, I trim in between all of my steps, and we need to make 4 of these units. So we can set these aside. Now we're going to work on the center of our block, but before we do that, there's some tricky cutting in this pattern. It's not tricky, but I just wanted to show you how to cut when you have something that's not like a half, a quarter, or 3/4. So in this pattern, the F piece is 2 5/8 inch square. And if you look on your ruler, the tall lines are your 1/2 inch, the medium size are your 1/4 inch, and then these little guys are 1/8 of an inch. And so how that works on your ruler, if you're say cutting 2 5/8 inch, is you're going to go over to the 2 and then just count 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8 of an inch. So it's that little line just on the other side of your 1/2 inch line. And so it's not difficult, it's just sometimes I know if they say 3/8 of an inch or 5/8 of an inch, it can get a little tricky. So I'm just going to place my 5/8 of an inch there. I'm also going to find that here. And the other cool thing about the Creative Grids rulers is they have these little markers right here, and that's going to give you a square every time. So if you are cutting a square, you can also line up this little L bracket on the corner to make sure that you're on the right lines. If for some reason you got off and you were accidentally on a 2 1/2 here but 2 5/8 here, you'll see that you don't have that lined up. So I just like to use all 3 of my lines here, here, and here to make sure I'm cutting the right size piece. And there's our 2 5/8 inch square piece. The next piece we have that's a little bit tricky is piece E, and this is 3 1/4 by 2 5/8. So again, I'm going to find my 2 5/8 inch line here and then 3 1/4. So I'm just going to slide that up so my 1/4 inch line is lined up here, and then here's my 5/8 inch line, and we can just trim off the excess. And now we have our piece that's 3 1/4 by 2 5/8. All right, now that we have all of our pieces cut, we're going to go ahead and assemble the center of this unit. So we're going to take our G square. We're just going to go ahead and place that in the middle, and then we'll be working around that. And then the rest of the squares are going to be our E and F. So the first ones I'm going to do are my F squares. And you're going to want to put an F on all 4 sides of your G square, just like that. Next, we're going to place our E squares. So here we have them all laid out. We're going to sew this row together, this row, and this row together. And then we're going to come back and sew all those rows together. We're doing the tops and bottoms last because it's just easier to do it that way. And we do want to nest these seams, so I'm going to be pressing all of mine towards this red fabric. All right, so here are our 3 rows, and we've sewn those together. And then now we just need to sew all those rows together. Now I've pressed all of my rows. Oh, I need to fix that. I've pressed all my rows towards the red so that those seams will nest when we sew them together. And so all I need to do is just lay this right sides down. And then you can see here, when I go to pin these, I've got this seam going to the right and this seam going to the left. So I can just go ahead and put a pin right there. And then I can do the same thing to this seam right here. And those seams will nest perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this. I'm going to sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then when I'm sewing, I actually start and stop about a 1/2 inch past where my piece stops and starts. That just helps give me a little bit extra stability when I go to press this all and trim it. Okay, so we've sewn on our top, and then now I've just prepared the second one. Again, I nested my seams right here where I want to make sure that they are lining up, and we're going to sew 1/4 inch. Again, extend your stitching about a 1/2 inch on both ends. Here's our center piece, and then now what I like to do is just fold that in half and just make a mark right there in the center. I also fold these pieces in half and just mark that center, and then I just line up those center lines and then put a pin right there, and that just makes sure that I've got my top and bottom pieces centered on my unit. Okay, and then we just need to take this to my machine and sew 1/4 inch. Again, I still extend my stitches about a 1/2 inch past my squares. Okay, so here is our finished piece, and I went ahead and just pressed, and you can just follow the pressing instructions in the pattern, but I just pressed out on my rows. You could press them open if you wanted. So it looks like this. We're going to take this and just turn it 45 degrees, just like that, and then we can take our 6.5 inch ruler and trim it up. And then when you're trimming, what you want to just make sure is that each of these points are about a 1/4 inch away from your cut line. And the other thing that you can do if you have a Creative Grids ruler is it has white lines at exactly halfway mark, and so I also like to line up those lines right here on those points of my center square. And then that way you know it's centered exactly evenly. If for some reason some of your sewing was a little bit off, you can adjust it just so that you don't cut off any of these points. And I am going to scoop mine up just slightly so I don't cut off this point up here. And then we're just going to trim all the way around. And then when we take these away, voila, we have our little crisscross block for the center of our unit. All right, and then the rest of this block is super easy. We just need to lay out our star points on each side. And then we have our C squares, and we're just going to place one of those in each of our corners, just like this. And then we'll sew our top, middle, and bottom rows together, and then sew those rows together. Okay, so I've sewn all of our rows together, and we have our cute little crisscross star block. The only thing we need to do now is add our side B borders and then our top and bottom A borders, trim it to 12.5 by 12.5, and we'll be done with today's block. Okay, let's take a quick look at our stitching progress. Here's where we're at with blocks 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I think this is really starting to turn out so cute, and you can also see how the quilt is going to start coming together as well. So this is almost like a little sneak peek of the quilt. These aren't identical to the quilt blocks, but they're pretty close. As you've seen already, here is all of my floss that I'm using. I'm using the classic Colorworks floss in Pink Posy, Caroling, 4-leaf clover, grasshopper, pebble beach, and cocoa bean. And then here are my DMC choices. And I think this one's just a little bit moodier, deeper tones. This is a little bit brighter, cheerier, happier. So you could pick which one that you like. Although if you're 5 blocks in, I'm guessing you've already picked. I am stitching on 14 count Aida in antique white colorway. This is just the DMC Charles Craft brand, and you can get this at most local hobby stores. And as you've probably figured out, it goes really fast. You can stitch one of these little blocks in one evening, and so it's really easy to stay up to date with this. And if you were thinking about joining and haven't yet, I highly recommend that you do so, especially if you're a beginner. This is a really easy pattern, and each of these little units are so easy and small that they're not too overwhelming or intimidating like a larger piece would be. However, when you're done, you will have a full size cross stitch piece. So I think it's a great way to get into cross stitching if you're new. But here's our update for blocks 1 through 5. All right, everyone, that is it for today's block, block number 5. I hope you enjoyed this one. And as you can see, even though that center looks like it's on point, it's super easy to put together. So thanks so much for joining me today. If you have any comments or questions, make sure to leave those below. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this year's sew along, what color scheme you're doing, and how it's going for you. Also, don't forget to join us in our Sew With Me Facebook group, where everyone's sharing their fun progress as well. I'd also like to encourage you to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming fun. That's going to be it for today's video. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next month for block number 6. I am stitching on is at our side A and B borders and our top. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how you are enjoying